All right. Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. I am Ward 1 candidate Jacob McGregor, and as usual, I'm here with my co host Jason Diodati and Ward 3 candidate Gurbir Nijjar. Gurbir, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thank you, Jacob and Jason, for having me again on your podcast. To your listeners and viewers, my name is Gurbir Nijjar. I am a Ward 3 candidate for the upcoming civic election in Calgary for Ward 3, which consists of primarily north central Calgary. I entered the race at the beginning of April this year, and I really entered for one big reason. It's because I care, and I've always aimed to take my knowledge, my background and passion and apply it at the broadest level. And I feel that the council platform offers that. So campaign has been fun so far. I've been learned a lot of new things, met a lot of nice people. And I really look forward to the journey that's going to be on, similar to you, Jacob, as we move closer to the election day in October.
Absolutely, my friend. And as you mentioned, your background is in engineering. So I'd love to get an engineer's perspective on, say, the Green Line project, especially now that we've recently heard that the south leg is a go and we've changed some procurement when it comes to the north leg, which would be of greater consequence to yourself. So do you want to give some opinions there?
Yeah, it's this has been, we all know, the biggest project in the history of the city. I think it was originally 4.9 billion, then it grew to 5.5 billion with cost escalation. And it's the province, for whatever reason, we know the reason that they decided were technicalities and wanting to review the previous work done by the committee and the city on the project. I think it was yesterday or last week. I think it was. They announced that the city had submitted all the necessary business cases and all the information the province requested to move it forward and gain that funding so they can actually green light and move the project forward. So it was good to see that the province came on board and is going to issue the funding, as they said, and allows the city to actually go and truly procure and move a contract forward to get things in the ground. On one aspect, I tweeted about it yesterday. On one aspect, I'm very happy to see this project go forward. I think, transit's an incredible thing. And I think here in Calgary, we need to do our part to, reduce our carbon footprint and offer more efficient and effective means of transportation, and also provide affordable transportation for our residents. So the Green Line definitely achieves these objectives, but I am also sad to see that the north leg from Eau Claire to 16th Avenue be a part of the second phase, or be only greenlit if the first phase goes as planned. So as an engineer, Jay, it's funny you mentioned, so I'm a professional engineer in the province of Alberta. I'm a civil engineer, that's my background. So these kind of big infrastructure projects are in my wheelhouse. I work for Rocky View County, so I manage the planning and development department, but I've also delivered a lot of capital projects on behalf of the county as well. And the thing is, once you move from a functional design to a more detailed design to a construction phase, and especially a project of this scale, let's be honest, there's so many unknowns until you really open the ground and get going. So it's the potential for cost escalation is real. It can happen really fast. You can have the best engineering design team in the world, but until you open up the ground and have true contracts for your material costs, labor costs, all those things, it can escalate fast. So I do appreciate that. Right. So
as we've sort of mentioned on the show, the original budget for these things is almost never the final budget number.
It's never, Jacob. And even oil and gas, I used to work oil and gas, and if the company knew at the beginning what the true cost was, they'd never go in the venture. So that's always a kicker, right? So as you move through a project, things come to light, and construction changes, and things move. And so I can see why the province was kind of not skeptical, but they wanted some more detail. But I think that it was beyond that. It wasn't just that; it was more than that. I mean, there was politics involved here as well. But I am sad that the second phase of the northern leg of the line is being not deferred, but in a way it's on the back burner to the first phase, which runs from Eau Claire south to Shepherd.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
But at least we've sort of discussed on Your Neck of the Woods for months now how the project is sort of this amorphous thing, and now at least it'll be something more physical and tangible, and we will get those real numbers eventually.
But yeah, we will, right? And to be honest with you, the city, even for me as a citizen looking at it, has done a pretty good job of segmenting the project to kind of mitigate that risk. Last thing, and just to kind of clarify for you, for some of our listeners, like by having a larger segment or large portions of the project under one contractor, do you run a risk of cost overrun because you have one contractor lined up and could deliver to you, say a longer stretch of the line. And when you break it up into smaller but reasonable chunks and segments, you do have that ability to take lessons learned from one contract and apply it to the next one, right? So these are just kind of fundamental contractual principles that are good practice, especially on jobs of this size. So I think the city did a pretty good job of mitigating risk in that type of sense. But until you get into the ground and get going, that's when you'll really know, if you're on point or if we missed in some aspects. But
Absolutely. So now that we have talked about sort of the big municipal news at the moment,
yeah.
I'd like to touch on something people can read on your website, and that's your emphasis on core services. What's your opinion on what a core service actually means?
Yeah, good question, Jacob. And City of Calgary categorizes services and categorize services 61 different services across 5 different service areas. To be honest with you, outside of the traditional things that municipalities deliver, such as recreation, parks, roads, transportation, utilities, waste and recycling, and more, those are that come top of mind as core. Over time, Jacob, what can happen is there can be something called scope creep that sort of steps in and that kind of comes into effect. And a service used to be only so big, and then over time it kind of grew based on obviously growth in the city or development pressure or political pressure. And again, one thing that I won't sit here and claim that I know the answer to that question. Outside of what I listed to you, like these core services that come top of mind. One thing that I would want to do, if I'm successful in this run as a councillor, is initiate a program review. And I think understanding, if the services that were delivered are meeting the criteria that was originally set out by council.
Absolutely.
Are they being delivered in an efficient and cost-effective manner? Can it be done better? Are they reaching the Calgarians that truly need to impacts, right? So I know administration does it. City administration staff,
Yes.
Always looks internally to see how do you find process efficiencies and things like that, new technology and those kind of things. But I think overall we have to take a look: is the program, one, important today? Two, is it fulfilling the needs and the requirements that it was when it was first sort of incepted and rolled out? So
see, and we're both familiar with this sort of idea because I've volunteered on several committees with the city and volunteered with my MP, and on these committees and other things, you start out with a plan to do, say, these 5 things, and then as you start working in a month, you end up with a list of 12 things that are tangentially related to the first 5 things, and you end up having to have meetings about whether the committee is still doing its job. So I think if things go the way we would like them to this fall, I would very much be on board with the service review, like you're suggesting.
Right, and the one thing as well, Jacob, that we have to be aware of, whoever is elected, the new council coming in October, this is the end of the City of Calgary's 4-year budget cycle. ends in 2022.
Yes.
And generally you pass an operational budget that is in effect come the following year, so for 2022. So the new council, whoever it's going to be, is going to have a pretty tall task of understanding the budget and passing something. And I work for a municipality, and having seen that, with our council in the past, it's a very steep learning curve. So that's why, if I'm successful, one thing I'd also want to do is try to get past the bare bones basic operating budget to get the city so that we can keep running our things come early into next year, and so we can actually do this review and actually have a look.
Absolutely.
Right.
You can't review programs that aren't paid for.
No, totally right. So you find a ways of how do you pass a budget that's that's needed to keep things going, and gives us as a council some time to have this look, right? And because we all know, Jacob, these things don't happen that fast. A review takes time, right? So
Absolutely.
there has to be some reasonableness, obviously, as to if we were to do it, but we need that time to actually go and have a look, and then formulate an opinion, and then go and budget based on that, right? And so yeah, the new council, in a budgetary perspective, whoever it is going to have a tall task coming in. That's for damn sure.
And Jace, do you want to jump in at all here?
And I was just going to say, and isn't that always the rub, for lack of a better term? And it's what we've spoken about with some of the other, candidates, was the idea that we really don't know, other than that it's going to be tough no matter who's in that position. We don't have all of the ends and bits and pieces. And so it becomes difficult to forecast what you're going to do from the outside, especially with changes coming in 2022, like you guys were just discussing. So it'll be interesting, I think, to see once all the, for lack of a better term, all the players are in their places, or all the aces are in their places, for lack of a better term. It'll be interesting to see kind of what the metadata, or what the back information that we don't see as private citizens or constituents is presented.
Totally. Jace, you're right about that, right? Like we're not behind closed doors. We don't know, right? We don't know the discussions, the conversation. That's one thing that people need to realize, right? Like we kind of, at the beginning of this question was, how did it go from this to like this, right? The political pressure, people coming, calling, it's, as a counselor, that's like, this is why the job is so damn hard. It's like, how do you balance all of that, the needs of your constituents, the needs of your ward, what's best for the city, and how do you keep this entire thing just moving forward? And while actually doing what you set out that you wanted to do on top, that's why you did it to begin with, right? You wanted to make a change, or you wanted to do good by the city, right? So those who are successful in this, right, as councilors, are the ones who can walk that line, and who have the ability to keep everybody kind of afloat. Those key stakeholders, the squeaky wheel. Unfortunately, in the society, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. We all know that, right? Again, whether it's right or wrong, we all know the answer to that. But like, how do you keep this entire thing moving forward? So you can actually achieve what you set out to achieve, and that's why. There's a kind of a different question. Sorry, Jason, I kind of took it and morphed it, but like,
no, not at all.
What's success in the role? Well, how do you define success? Is it that you stayed there for 4 years and beyond? Is that success? Maybe for some. Is it success that you were able to achieve? To me, success is, were you able to achieve what you sought out to?
Well, I was gonna say, I'd like to think, hopefully, when we're talking in 4 years about the next election, I'd like to be having this conversation and talking about all the great things we managed to get done, as opposed to just keeping your job is not enough here. You got to be doing this you got to have some goals, or you're just taking up a chair. You might as well be like one of those cardboard cutouts we see at sporting events, if your entire goal is to just get reelected.
And that's the problem in it, right? Like, that's, to be very honest, it's one of the biggest decisions before putting that paper in and go forward and embarking on this journey, Jacob, was, I'm also tired of seeing career politicians. I'm tired of it. I'm tired because people from our generation, don't really step up. Like me, example of me, I'm blessed to have an incredible life and an incredible career. And, for me, I'm stepping out of that to do this, right? Because again, it means that much to me in the future of the city, and us getting back on our feet and being prosperous again is huge. And I think the thing is that this politicking thing is so much BS that goes with it that many of our generation and the generation behind us don't want anything to do with it. And then what ends up happening is the career politicians, because of name recognition, they just ingrain. I mean, I shouldn't make that general of a statement, right? The career, right? But I think you kind of get what I'm trying to say, right? People who are just in the role naturally become politicians, stay there. We know the guy. We know this person's name. They show up all the time. So let's just vote for them, right? In one aspect, I can respect that because you know what you're going to get as a ratepayer. But how do you actually make a real change? You don't. You kind of keep status quo and keep kind of increasing a little. Sorry, I keep talking. You keep just marginally just keep increasing or whatever, right? That's also one of the big reasons, to be honest, why I threw my hat in the ring is like, this has to change.
Absolutely. And well, that's one of the reasons I personally would like to maybe see something on term limits as well. I know that's not something everybody loves. Some people even call it undemocratic because you're not letting this person continue to do the job if they earn the votes to do it. But I'd still like to see change at regular intervals. Otherwise, you do end up with the politicians who just lose touch with the people they're trying to help.
Absolutely, absolutely right. And the thing is, right? You set term limits, and then are you then limiting the best candidate? You might be, right? And it's one of those things, right? How do you walk the line where it's reasonable, but you're also not selling out a democratic system, right? It's kind of like you're kind of in the middle, to be honest, right? So
exactly.
It's not that simple.
No.
If only any of this was, then everybody would do it, right?
Totally.
It's too funny.
Totally. Yeah.
So you mentioned that we're not behind closed doors seeing the information on these projects and things like that. And that's something that's come up a lot here on your neck of the woods, where we talk about how we would like to see some more of that transparency and better communication. Obviously, these closed door sessions do have to take place when it has to do with personal information or negotiating interests of the city, for example. But it seems like it creates this vacuum of information sometimes as well.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, right? And again, my experience in working for a municipality, some things have to be done in closed session or in camera, just due to the fact the public interest or under the FOIP Act, there are legal requirements to do certain things in camera. But I do feel, to be honest with you, that now running for public office and following the city of Calgary a lot more closely, I do feel a lot of the time they go into camera, in camera a lot in closed session. Yes. And sometimes that question, do you truly need to go into closed session? Does it truly meet those requirements of the FOIP Act, that, to protect public interest or, negotiations or whatever else it is that, that trigger. But I do think, to be honest, they do a little bit too much sometimes. And just in itself, right, because a lot of, I guess, sometimes people aren't that well versed in what needs to be closed session, what doesn't need to be. Naturally, who knows what the FOIP Act? People, unless you want to know it, you wouldn't know, right? So that's why the average Calgarian looking at it, why do people keep going back into closed session all the time? We want to know how they're deliberating, what they're saying, what they're thinking, what the information is, and how they made decisions, right? The word is transparency. That's kind of what you're saying, pretty much, right? Yes. And I think I give people benefit of the doubt in my life. That's how I live. That's how I like to believe in humanity, give people benefit of the doubt. So I like to think that it's truly a closed session reason, but then you see it that often. Even me, being my job kind of closely, is around things like this. I question a little bit too, to be honest with you, and who knows why. Again, we're not behind closed doors. We're not the ones who are part of these deals. We're the ones who speak with city administration at that level, right? So we don't really know, but it happens a bit too much. I do agree.
And Jace, we all know you have some strong opinions on this particular subject.
I do. And again, it's interesting though you say that, Jacob. And I was going to ask you to kind of fill in your beer as to what we, kind of spoke about with one of our last candidates we spoke to, where they provided a really different perspective on in-camera sessions. And it was very different from what we saw. And I loved it. I really do believe that the part of the definition of being an adult is changing your opinion based on new information, right? Just because you felt one way today doesn't mean that tomorrow you shouldn't feel that way. It doesn't mean you're a flip-flopper. It doesn't mean that you don't have any gumption, or it doesn't mean that you don't have any, in my opinion, at least, it means that you're recognizing that there might not have been something you were looking at. And so with that said, Jacob, do you want to fill in Gurbir as to what, and please remind me, I am so sorry, life has been crazy, which candidate we spoke to who had such an awesome and different perspective on these in-camera sessions?
Yeah, it was one of our more recent ones. I think it was like, I can't remember exactly. I think it was Teresa Hargreaves or somebody like that. Or they
I'm looking it up as we speak.
Yes, please do. But in any case, they sort of said that these sessions, even if you want to give that little bit of information about why, then that would also it gives enough of a clue that you end up exposing more of that information you're meaning to protect.
Yes, exactly. And the argument was that, and I believe, am I wrong, Jacob? Was it Ted Knutson?
Oh, it was
Knutson,
Ted.
sorry?
It was Ted Knutson. Yes, thank you very much. That was our conversation with Ted.
And it was so fascinating because it was so different. But he made a really good point and said, you guys, he said that's all. He said, Jacob, that is the one thing that I think is misunderstood about these in-camera sessions, is that any little tiny clue, any tidbit, any suggestion that there is something, some going on in the background, within council, is a cue for a lot of journalists and a lot of those in the media to hunt. Oh, that means this is where, it's almost that idea of in law where if you push in all areas and your opposition screams at one area that you're pushing, you've probably hit the right point. And it's the same idea here, where I believe that their argument was if they even give just a little tidbit, they know that's where to put the pressure and where to explore more using that little tidbit of information. However, and I'd ask both of you this question now that we've talked about what Mr. Knutson had to say, but the idea that, do you both of you, and I'll ask both of you this question, do you believe that there is a happy medium, and is there a balance that we can strike, again, coming from this side of the table? We don't have all the information, behind, closed doors. But do you think there is an ability to maneuver this and walk that line? Like, I think that's really the moral of this conversation is, counselors need to be able to walk that line. Do you both think that you could, as a hardball with Jason resumes once again, but do you both think you can walk that line on this subject within camera sessions?
Well, and even to Mr. Knutson's point, even if we're not able to have fewer of these sessions for whatever reason, and I do agree he threw in a good argument there, we still need better communication after council's meetings are completed, telling Calgarians what's going on. So even if we don't end up reducing the number of closed sessions, which I'd still like to, there needs to be a greater degree of communication from counselors.
Yeah, I think, Jacob, I think you nailed it, right? I think, like, there's a reason why it goes in camera and there's a fight backed, and whether it be advice from an official, whether it be economic interest in a public body, there's reasons why it goes into closed session. And I think would be lying to say that if Jacob and I are in council, it's going to change. But like, there's going to be closed session items, end of story. It's going to happen. It's just that the ones that are borderline, the ones where are they actually need to be closed session? Can they be done in the public forum? those are kind of the things that we have to really get out and get in front of, right? It's because I think there's a fine line here, and it's like, and we don't know kind of what's coming down the pipe, but like it's something that we really need to, again, it's a trust thing, right? And I think you said in the sense you said, like, whether something went into closed session or not, how the councillor or council as a whole, of the mayor, conveys the messaging or the decision or whatever to the general public. I think that's actually what it really comes down to. If just say in a very hypothetical situation, if the public trusted fully everything the council did and everything this mayor did, whatever,
which they never will.
I am very hypothetical, right? And everything happened behind closed door. So okay, but they were very good communicators, right? And everything done is very clearly defined. They know exactly what's going on. It would be a different story. But there's an element of distrust, obviously, here. There's obviously a bit of people asking, why are there so many closed session meetings? So that's why the only thing I can really commit to is that, if something needs to go into closed session, it truly meets the definition of needing to go into in camera, then we do. If it doesn't, then okay, then we have the conversation in a public forum. So I think that's one way of how you renew the trust. Second thing, like you said, Jacob, you really have to go and communicate. And I think communication is the key to success on just about every aspect of life. And it's no different than this job. How well can you communicate and engage with the constituents in the way that they want to be communicated with? That's one thing I'm learning now too. I'm not sure you've seen this on your campaign trail, is you can't engage with everybody the same way. Some people,
absolutely not. Right? It doesn't work.
They want to see you at their doorstep. Some people don't want to see you at your doorstep. Some people want to see you on the side of the pathway and you say hi. They don't want to see you on social media. So that's the thing, right? So a key is, how do we take our engagement tools and apply them, in our case, to our wards and to our constituents? And I think, it's not just the closed. Sorry, I'm babbling, Jason, but it's not like
not at all.
The closed session. It's beyond the closed session. It's many other actions that happen before and after as well.
Well, and even
absolutely
getting back to the not being able to engage everybody the same way, even if you just look at the canvassing we're both familiar with during COVID. Yeah. When the recent shutdown, the Stop the Spike movement sort of hit Alberta here, and everything was closed down, I had decided to stop canvassing activities, and I got applause from many, but I heard from some others that they were disappointed that I was not able to see them, because it was very important, and it's very important to me, I'll be honest as well. I voted for the person I voted for last time because they were the only person to actually door knock at my house. So this was a very big balancing act between what's the right thing to do in a tough situation and what's the best way to reach people.
You got it right. And like, this is the thing, like, you technically door knocking was, so myself, I have not door knocked, but I have gone door to door, and I left my material and I walked away.
That's what we ended up doing.
Yeah. So in a way, your messaging or your material the print material still got to the person, to the person, but the actual conversation may or may not have happened. So what I did was I went around in the community during times I might catch you outside. So I went in on nice days, kind of late morning, so I might catch you in the yard, and then I can have a conversation with you like that at a distance, right? Exactly. So that's why you could technically door knock, but maybe a month ago it was very frowned upon. It may have actually a negative effect than a positive effect.
Yeah.
So I can't even see my parents, why the heck am I talking to you about civic politics? Right.
Right. So, And that's exactly what I think of, Jacob. And I think that, for example, you'll never please everybody.
Totally.
And exactly to Gurbir's point, like, you could have, but at what cost, right? And I think, I don't speak for nearly everyone, but I think I'd speak for a couple people when I say, if I knew that even at a distance, you took that chance and knocked on my parents' door, for example. That might be something that makes me a little concerned, possibly a little bit upset, going like, hey, like, I trust you, man. I'm sure you're healthy and you're keeping your distance and wearing a mask and you're getting vaccinated, but was it really worth the chance, right? And so for those who I think were upset about it, I think if I would explain to them that you've been trying to do your podcast to really get content out and speak about issues, and I think at least from my side of things, I think that you did the right thing. But it's tough. It's hey, once again, gentlemen, walking that line.
Yeah.
You got it right, Jason. You got to walk that line, right? You're not going to please everybody. That's the nature of this game. Is how do you appease the greatest number of people? That's kind of what it comes down to at the end of the day, right? And like you said, exactly what you said. Cool. I might be cool with it, but I may have elderly parents who are more, compromised. Like, is your election more important than their health? Like, people can easily make that connection, right? And it's like, I didn't intend that, but I can't control how you feel, right? So that's what I mean. It could go the other way so fast but you're actually there spreading word about the importance of a huge election, the importance of you as a candidate, right? And that's why many opted not to do it. And
and it's, and like you said, it's that line. It's so tough. And I commend you, gentlemen, for being in this race, because I really do believe you're both great people and would be great for the job, but I could not do this myself. This is tough. So kudos to you both.
Thanks, appreciate that.
Now, speaking of issues I wanted to discuss on this podcast, I want to. We've all obviously getting back to COVID, had a bit of a tough year here, and it's had a gigantic impact on people's mental health. And I wanted to know if you had some thoughts on some things we could do to improve mental health outcomes in the city. I know I have a couple of things. I'd like to see a online portal launched where you can search mental health service providers by cost, program availability, and condition that you have, as well as a pilot program, say, with the province, similar to the low-income transit pass, where we remove sort of cost as a barrier for low-income Calgarians. And ultimately, the goal of both of these is to give people a place to start when they're looking for help, to reduce the amount of people who hit that point where they're in crisis.
Yeah, Jacob, it's a big thing. 1 in 10 Canadians suffer from some form of mental health, and it's a brain disorder. Your mental health gets impacted in so many different ways, right? Human beings are very social creatures. We all know that. And I think the COVID pandemic has shown us the importance of mental health on our overall well-being. And it's, being in isolation, we'll call it an isolation, not being able to interact regularly with our friends, family, peers, neighbors, has been huge in itself. And I think if you ask honestly, that's been the number one thing why numbers have spiked
Exactly.
the last little while. And I think as slowly as we open up here and kind of resume normalcy, whatever new normal is, it's going to make a difference just in itself. But we all know even that's not enough. People generally want, it all centers around, in my opinion, a sense of belonging. You feel like you belong or included in something. And I think we, it's not only on the city's shoulders. The city has, the ability to provide services and do things to help people, and creating places to recreate, places to socialize, places to gather. And I think that's one thing that I feel will take us kind of in helping solve some of our mental health issues. But like things that you mentioned, like transit and things like bringing down barriers, right? So if you hypothetically don't have access to a vehicle, or cannot afford to take transit regularly, maybe having maybe cheaper and more affordable transportation allows you to access some of these resources that you need. But one big thing as well, Jacob, that I've noticed, is people don't know where to turn. And it's like, well, what do I do? Who do I call? Do I call my counsel? Do my counselor? But who do I call 911? Like, what do I do? Right? And I think that's why a lot of times, a lot of mental health things, in my opinion, are best handled locally to where you live. And that's why, as a city, working closely with our schools and with our community associations, with our neighbors, with people local to your community, is the easy way to get closest to these issues and find solutions to solve them. And that's why this kind of back onto this engagement piece and really understanding, how to work with one another. How do we communicate? Where do you live, work, and play? How do I go to where you live, work, and play? How do I do it where it's convenient to you, right? People don't want to take time out of their day, nor do they know how to go and seek a resource somewhere else. So the solution, to be honest, is very multifaceted. It's not just a single thing. And that's why, the city has various strategies. I'm not sure if you've seen that mental health strategy report that they had put out. I think council had passed it, I think maybe a few months back now it's been. But it identifies like key things, like it identifies, of again, being well. How do you remain well in places to where you are? But if you're not, how do you easily find and seek out these resources that are available to you to help you, right? Yeah. And the third aspect of it, again, is staying safe and kind of maintaining that kind of level. And to be honest with you, sorry, I'm babbling again a lot, but the solution is multifaceted. It's going to take a lot of different activities, resources, recreation, supports, people, and also think about this too. You throw another thing that mixes diversity. It's a very diverse city. Yeah. People of different cultures, different languages, language barriers, people understanding, or understanding, it's the wrong word, like how social norms, and like, maybe I don't recreate like that. I don't interact like that. I don't, connect with people like that, right? So it's actually a very complex issue to be very
absolutely honest.
It is. Absolutely. And no, you were not rambling, sorry, okay. I'll let you go, but you were not rambling. That's like
sort of having a place to start was a big part of why I would like to see that online portal. But you bring up an interesting part with like at the cultural level as well. In a lot of the communities in the city, it's not like it's taboo to even seek the help. And then or even from a gender norm perspective, it's a lot harder for men sometimes to seek this help. And then it's interesting you mentioned like recreating and other social activities like these as part of the solution, because a lot of the times I don't think people connect these two things, but these community gathering places, that's one of the bigger things we've sort of been robbed of by COVID. And a lot of these facilities in the city are worn down also and in need of renovation. And I think that's something that we need to be focusing on, as well as making sure we have these great community spaces for people to meet.
I agree, right? And I'll speak for myself, right? Sometimes when I feel like I have the blues, or I kind of feel down over nothing, I go for a walk outside and I walk around, we have nice ponds and pathways around, and it just lifts your mood, right? And that's why it's actually really, it's so important and integral, in our communities to have well-kept, maintained, accessible, open spaces, places to congregate, places to meet. And that's why, again, like we kind of go back to your first question, core services. Is recreation a core service? Yes, it is. It is, right? Because it's meant, its place in our society, its role in our society is paramount, right?
Even if you look, say, at like the neighborhood hockey rinks in the city, these are places basically every Calgarian, if not Canadian, is familiar with. Your kids skate there, you play hockey, you but even outside of that, you just meet and talk with the other people there.
And that's enough. And to be honest with you, yeah. So say you don't play hockey, I can't skate, and I don't know. It's okay, right? But like sometimes, like having a place you can sit and watch people, right? Just see right what's kind of going on, and seeing people, be happy and smile and pass the puck around, whatever, right? It makes you feel good, and I think that's why if you look, the definition of recreation has changed dramatically than what it used to be. It's not typical.
Yeah, and on that point too, I think that there's something to be said even about art, right? Recreation and sport is so important, but like I've been trying to echo this, and I beat on my drum, and I'm a little biased. I used to be I used to perform and do things like that back in my heyday, as they say. But a lot of us have gotten through COVID by enjoying things like Netflix, right? Like by enjoying film, art in many variations. And I think a lot of us, and at least I noticed when I went walking around in Eau Claire, went and visited some of the art displays that happened, some of the Indigenous art displays that were happening about, I think it was about a month or two ago. And I think there is an element there, and I just always have to give that shout out to, yes, recreation for sure. It is a core service, but I also think that as long as it's done properly, and we've spoken about this with other candidates, Jacob, that blue ring, the blue ring. Totally. But beyond things like that, where there's interactive, engageable, for lack of a better term, art that's done intelligently and is designed for that escape or that change of mindset for those who might be going through a mental health crisis, or like you said, Gurbir, yourself, having the blues, going for a walk and just kind of getting a change of scenery, and trying to change your mindset. Art does that, and if it's done properly and without the, as you mentioned earlier, Gurbir, the politicking, it can be done correctly and done right. And I think it can impact a community far greater than a blue ring on the side of our, that we got from another country on the side of, right beside our airport, versus being somewhere downtown interactive, or a park, whether it be Confederation Park, pick a park, put it somewhere where people can interact versus, oh, I drove by it today and I barely saw it because the sky is also blue, not to be.
That damn ring is my word, man.
Yeah. What a world. What a world. But no, so I had to give that shout out. Sorry about that, Jacob.
No, it's all good.
So, and I know we're on limited time here as well. We all have lots of things to get going. So I'd like to talk real briefly about business and work in the city coming out of all of this, what's going on. Jace touched on it a little bit with like the film and television industry. That's an industry I think Calgary has a great opportunity to take advantage of. We have some 100%. Emerging tech infrastructure coming, and lots of interest there. So I wanted your thoughts on how we get the job market here moving again, and what sort of fields that might be in.
Yeah, great question. And that's, to be honest, one of the biggest things that will move the city forward straight up is job creation and economy. It's if not the biggest thing.
The old political saying, it's the economy, stupid. Yeah.
But film and movie has been a big thing here for a long time. It's not new. It's just been underground for a while. No one really knows, right? And I think now the provincial government's starting to realize, and then they had rolled out a new tax credit program for film and for film operations and operators, and give them tax breaks to incentivize and bring more film to Alberta. And it's something that Calgary is being known for on the map. So I think we need to further leverage and start exploiting and really attracting people to come here and shoot. Another big industry, this is an energy place, and I'll be very honest with you, fossil fuels and traditional energy is not going anywhere in any short period of time. No. But there's clearly a pivot. There's a shift to going towards greener energies. We all know that, right? So so the recovery of the oil and gas sector is going to be a big part of our economic recovery. And I'm not, in my lifetime, I don't feel like it's going to go away. There's still planes, they're still going to fly, ships are going to sail, and it's not even just fuel. There's so many, roads are still going to be paved. There's so many other things that people don't realize that rely heavily on the oil and gas sector, right? Plastics, so many different things. So that industry is not going to go away, but we have to add to it so that we stabilize the economy. And what does stable economy even mean, right? Economy that doesn't go into big fluxes and swings over like one sector dropping. It's diversification, right? How do you actually diversify? And I think Calgary, the work, a big part of our workforce being trained how they are. Energy is a natural, place that we can again further foster, create, and grow. And renewables is the future, whether it be wind, solar. I think with Calgary being one of the sunniest, or Southern Alberta, I should say, being one of the sunniest places in the continent, and Southern Alberta being windy, we're starting to see investment going into solar farms, investment going to wind farms, and I think we got to really establish ourselves as the green energy capital of the world, or of Canada at least, right? And where energy companies want to make the investment in Alberta and utilize our workforce. But we're also seeing a lot in the tech market. We're also starting to see a lot of small, medium-sized tech companies start relocating to Calgary, recognizing the skills of the workforce, but also our
low
city.
cost.
And cost, totally, money, right? Capital is king, right? And cost to do business, and also Calgary is a very affordable and incredible place to build a great life, like I have been able to do here, right? That's one of the big reasons why I run Calgary. If it was not for Calgary, I wouldn't have the life that I have, and I really mean that. Like, I love this place; it's given me so much. I've been able to build a great life, and I think companies are starting to recognize that you can build an incredible life here very affordably, and there's a good workforce. So we're starting to see some of these sectors starting to uptick. People are starting to realize, and the question is, what's the city's role? It's not all the city's shoulders. Calgary is what Calgary is. It can't be, right? We have economic development. The city's even gone. Sorry, I keep saying county, that's where I work, but the city's gone even further, and they created these funds called OCIF. I'm not sure if you read about that. Many would question, is that the role of a municipality to go and pretty much have seed money for new tech startups, right? It's again scope creep. But on the other aspect, you see, it's like, well, you are putting your money where your mouth is. You believe in Calgary, and you're trying to help, bootstrap and fund some of these startups. You believe in the future of the city. So that's why Calgary. I know Calgary is going to be prosperous as it was when I first came here back in 2011. I think it's going to be even better than that. We just have to find a way, Jacob and Jace, to kind of diversify. So when the oil swings and energy price swings happen, that we are not decimated. Like, I'll be honest, I'll tell you right now, like when I first came here in 2011, all you needed was a degree and a pulse, so you got a job. It was crazy.
The boom, it was so nice out here.
Right? People jumping job to job. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? Back in BC, where I'm from, like, you have a job, you work it. That's it, right? You work your way up and whatever. And if you're to change your job, it has to be a big deal. It is a big deal. Here I came, people were changing jobs over those small incremental pay increases and different projects and stuff, and I was kind of taken back. But then you see what happens, and you see what happens though, like when the sector kind of ticks down, and how many other industries and businesses are so attached to it, right? Whether it be where I work at Rocky View, dealing mostly with land development and things like that, like you start seeing that sector start declining so fast as well, right? So everything is tied and attached to this one big sector that fuels everything else. And when times are good, it's a great thing. Money's flying from the sky, right? Everybody's happy. Things are flying off the shelves, right? But when you see downtime and you see how that one industry impacted so many other things, you start seeing the need to diversify. So again, to kind of come back full circle on this, the biggest thing is exploiting and really leveraging and attracting these other forms of sector of green energy and film and tech, and really trying to add that diversity to our economy, so that we're not just attached to the one horse.
And it's funny what you mentioned, because for a lot of people, including a lot of people up where I live, that that word diversification, that's a scary word. That makes a lot of people think that the traditional industry is just gonna vanish. And for one, that's impossible.
Yeah.
The way the province is set up. But for another, you just can't turn everything off and then suddenly switch to something else. That's not how this works.
It doesn't work that way. It's totally right. Yeah, we're done with the heavy crude. We're done with this. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. Like, it's funding your operation, so you got to continue doing it, but you can start pivoting a little bit. So.
Yes. But you mentioned that it's pretty sunny and pretty windy on the prairies. I mean, these are things we can probably do in conjunction with the petrochemical industry and be successful at. And I think, like you mentioned with tech and other things like that, even the shift to remote work is kind of proving that there's different ways to be doing things as well. So that's going to be very interesting to see how that affects things.
What are your thoughts, Jace?
There's something to be said about the mindset that seems to be, again, it's starting to trend outside of certain niches within society, whereas the argument is starting to become, if you are not wholly accepting of said commodity, idea, perspective, you are against it. And so it's infuriating to see this back and forth where, very much to your point, Gurbir, and as well, Jacob, there's something to be said about the ability to do both. Like, I hate to sound like El Paso's Tacos, right? Like, we're not on a commercial with hard shell and soft shell where that nice, sweet, little girl was like, you're like, how about both? Like, why not both? We can do both. You know what I mean? Like, they can coexist without hurting the other. But there's a belief, at least on the petrochemical side, that with the other one existing is a threat to their existence. But that's a paradoxical argument if the argument is accepted that we use oil and gas and petrochemicals across many different, products, categories, across many parts of society. So if the argument, and it's accepted and it's proven to be true, that this isn't going anywhere, the petrochemical production and the necessity for oil and gas as an industry is there for at least the next 100 years, then why is there such a threat with something like solar and wind? And I guess the argument becomes, well, what if it accelerates that change? And I still would argue that petrochemical has so many applications, components in electronics, plastics. You can go on and on and on and on. There is something to be said that energy does not need to be their bread and butter anymore, because there's other players in that space that can also do it. But solar can also not provide plastic. Like, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, wind can't make plastics or components for phones. It can't. So there's something to be said about that. And I just wanted to make sure we touched on that, because it's a great point that you both brought up.
Here's a funny thing to circle back on as well, back to the contentiousness of the Green Line, saying it's a bit of a war on cars, and that's not necessarily the intent. And secondly, nobody likes traffic. So let's maybe find some ways to reduce the vehicle traffic. With that said, we do need to make, I think, downtown slightly more vehicle friendly in a lot of ways, because that is still people's primary transportation mode. And right now, like, if you take parking downtown, it's so ridiculously inconvenient that it's hard to to get that traffic down there.
I'll tell you right now, right? I remember it was like 2 summers ago, well, before that, more than that, because COVID happened last summer. So before that, I was in downtown Toronto and I'm like, wow, there's no cars parked in the street. They don't allow it. You cannot park on the street. So imagine how many people live in the greater Toronto area, and downtown Toronto does not allow street parking.
Yeah.
To be honest, I laugh at your comment. It's the war on the vehicle. Bloody this bloody province, this continent is built around the damn vehicle. It's been built. This is how you move. You get in a car and you go A to B, right? Yeah. And cool. Like, I get it. Car gives you freedom. You can go wherever you want, right? The thing is, if you look at any other major city in the world, there is generally, and all the ones I've been on in Europe and in Asia and everything, is like there is the public transportation is a huge component of how they move people around the city, around their region, I should say, not in the city, the region. Right? And I think one thing is like this province has been slow to embrace that. Because if you look, I remember I was driving on up in my ward, Country Hills Boulevard. I'm from BC, right? My Country Hills Boulevard or Shaganappy Trail or Sarcee Trail is wider than some highways in the Vancouver area. I mean,
no, I got friends from North Van and stuff.
Like that's like a bloody, that's like an expressway, some of these roads, right? Yeah. So this city is well, like people like it because it's well planned, it's well thought up. It's the roads are big, they have a lot of capacity. But the thing is, like, outside of transit in general, we're on green line, red line, blue line, any lines, right? The thing is, like, outside of providing another means of transfer, outside of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by taking vehicles off the road, putting people in the cars and moving them, right? The one thing it also does, is it lessens the need for you to invest in more transportation infrastructure, roads, right? I, as an engineer, I work for a municipality. Roads is the biggest infrastructure we have. We're the first one to say it. Same with the city of Calgary, right? You just saw Rick McIver announce like a few weeks back the $200 million investment into Deerfoot, right?
Yep.
So they're throwing money at it. And again, I'm not going to say I don't like it. Cool. I would like to see more capacity on certain interchanges. I would like to see more lanes, obviously, right? But it's just like, it takes someone who really believes in public transit to say, yeah, I want to find a way to reduce the number of vehicles on the road so I don't have to maintain and repave and resurface or expand these things as often as I need to, because people are choosing to take public transit. I took public transit my entire life until I moved to this house in Panorama Hills because it's not conducive. I cannot go where I need to go in a timely manner. Jacob, you talked about downtown. We had one vehicle that lived downtown in a condo in the Beltline. Yeah. I used to walk to work every day. I used to go for a run and by the Saddle Dome and stuff along the river. And I look back, man, that was incredible. Like, I would love to live without a car. I mean, first one to tell you, I'd love to not have one. I would love for public transit to be convenient. I would love that if I had to go somewhere that was not that convenient on transit, I'd rather pay the Uber or the taxi than own the vehicle, right? I think we need to get people like that, and or bike. One thing I haven't done a whole lot is bike around. And this city is doing its part, and will continue. If I'm elected to do our part to further promote and build infrastructure with biking, right? So again, it's this kind of that's why I laughed at the comment, because you were not wrong, right? It's a war against the car. Good, right? This entire system runs based on the car. Right, you buy a car, that car needs maintenance, that car needs gas, that car needs to be replaced, start it again. You need 2 cars, one for each person, right? So it's just like that's in itself the root, right? It's like, how do you change someone's mindset? Actually, it doesn't matter. Like, your other means of transportation are available to you: walk, bike, train, bus, that you can get to where you need to go to in a pretty efficient manner. It has to be convenient. If I want to go see you in Ward 1, I don't want it to take 3 hours. Right?
No, and now it would. So, that's lots of transfers.
Bus A to B to C, maybe the C train. That's like that's
like, on the red line. You're fine, but a lot of bus transfers first.
So that's what they sort of. I go off a lot on this, and it's just the fundamentals. Like, how do you most efficiently move people through your region, through your city? I don't see anything better than the rail right now. LRT, I think, again, if you can go underground the whole way, they're the best thing ever. But who can pay for that? No one's ever going to pay for that, right? Exactly. So that's why the Green Line, we saw the entire issue with the downtown tunnel. Like, that's a very expensive thing to do. But isn't it the most effective thing to do? The train is everything is below. You don't take up right away. You don't take up any lane. You don't take up any kind of visual impact, right? So, sorry, but that's my kind of take on public transit. And that's why I'll always be a big proponent of expanded transit, better transit, more accessible, more convenient. But there has to be the ridership. We just can't keep throwing money at it, hoping people will come. Like, it has to be well thought out.
Now, I will say I do use transit, especially when I went to university. It was at University Station, the Red Line, quite a bit. So I completely understand the importance in what you're saying. I do also know that there's a fair amount of people that they like their car. They don't necessarily have that same perspective where they don't want to have a vehicle in a perfect world. So we do still need to make it convenient for that group of people. However, if you strike the proper balance, you reduce traffic for those who do get around the city with a vehicle as their primary mode of transportation. And you make an interesting point. The more we have to expand our road system, the more we have to spend money maintaining that infrastructure. And for everybody here knows, after all these episodes that we've done, I'm a fiscal conservative. You guys are telling me you don't want to save money on having to pave the roads, guys. That there's definitely things we can do.
Totally. Yeah. I'm not insinuating by any means the car is going to go away. I'm not. I have 2 cars. I drive everywhere. So I'm the culprit too. I'm the first one to tell you, right? But that's what I'm trying to say. How do you, from also younger, but I'll use the word younger, from an earlier stage, show people that there are other ways outside the vehicle, but the vehicle gives you the ultimate freedom. You can go wherever you want on your own terms, whenever you want, and then right, you can have a nice vehicle. It's so many of these things, right? That's why the vehicle is never going to go away. The only question is, how do you get? I love the word pivot. How do you make that pivot away? So you start having the masses or more people really reap the benefits and rewards of centralized and public transit.
All right. So I think we are running pretty close to time here. So I will say, if you like hearing the conversation, you're gonna have a chance to hear Gurbir and I talk again a couple of times coming up pretty soon here. On June 14th, we're gonna be having a forum called Let's Talk About Calgary. And on June 7th, we're going to be on Conversations Among Candidates. So
looking forward to that. That's going to be a lot of fun. And I like having these conversations and seeing other opinions and viewpoints. At the end of the day, there's one thing that, any counselor, no matter who it is, any one of us, we can't promise anybody really anything.
Yeah.
We can only promise what these 2 hands can do, right? Is what can you actually achieve, right? And the thing is, what can you commit to? And it's listening, it's hearing people. And the biggest thing for me, sorry, Jacob, is can you, but preferably you as a candidate, work with other people? Can you get along? Can you form relationships? Can you form bonds? Can you support initiatives and garner support for yours? That's one thing I'm trying to educate voters on when I go around. It's like, at the end of the day, all of our platforms say there are a lot of similar things, no doubt. Fiscally conservative, totally, right? Help people in need, obviously, right? But like, how do you achieve it? You are one of 15 people who sits at that table. How do you work with those people in the most efficient way, the best way possible to actually get something done? A divided, broken council is probably the worst thing you could ever do. Nothing gets
absolutely
right.
And one of the big reasons, and you guys out there have heard me say it before, why we're talking to the other candidates instead of having me talk your ear off about these various issues we're having, is in the end 15 of us are gonna be colleagues, so you have to be able to build these relationships with people.
Absolutely. It's the number one thing. 100% it is. If you want success in this role, is it how do you formulate relationships with people and they want to work with you and you want to work with them? That's the number one thing. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Well, hey guys, thank you so much for your time and thank you for having me. I appreciate you thinking of me, and I look forward to having more of these conversations. I look forward to our Let's Talk Calgary. That's going to be an incredible chat. So for all listeners today, please, go to Eventbrite and search the event. Let's Talk Calgary. I think it's June 14, right?
Yes, it is.
At 7 p.m. It'll be on Zoom, and it's going to be fun.
And just really quickly, this is our conversation that we have on the regular. So if you have anything you want us to talk about on your neck of the woods, or question you want to ask one of the guests, please feel free, reach out to me on social media at Jacob for Ward 1 or on my website at jacobforward1.ca. You can see what I want to do, and I want to be your voice, and I am here to answer any questions you have. So please ask.
And one last thing from me, and then Gurbir, we'd love for you to plug your website as well. But
sure.
Folks, second shots are becoming available.
Yes.
Vaccines are out there. Please, I know it might seem like, well, I got one, and that's probably enough. Please get your second shot. We understand, we respect all walks of life and thoughts, but think about those in the community who are elderly. Think about those who are immunocompromised, those with comorbidities. Let's put this to bed. Let's open up Calgary, Alberta, Canada, the world. Let's get back out there, and let's do so by following through, getting our second shot, and reopening and getting everyone healthy, safe.
Well, I was gonna say, even if you only look at it from your own perspective, which I hope you don't. I hope you do the right thing because you want to protect yourself and those around you. But even if you look at it from your own lens, we are this close to the end of things.
Close.
And every time you get a shot, you get us closer. So get your second doses, everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jace, for saying that. And yeah, totally. I can't wait to get mine. So I have to wait till June to register. So I can't wait to get my second dose and for life to kind of go back to what it was, whatever that new normal is. So absolutely very important thing. Lastly, just to close, again, thank you guys for having me. You can follow me on all social media platforms at Gurbir Ward 3, or you can check me out on my website at www.gurbirward3.ca. And again, any listener who wants to have a further conversation and talk more about our city and what we can do better, I'd love to hear it. So thanks again, guys. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Gurbir. This has been awesome, man. It's always a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jacob.
And for another episode, that's what's happening in your neck of the woods. I hope to be able to see more of you in person soon. But till then, you can hear my voice on this podcast. Bye, everybody.